Warning: viewer discretion is advised. Hi friends, welcome to another episode of Meals to Unalive For. I'm your host Jody Breton, and if you enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. So today we're going to be talking about Oscar Ray Bolin. He was born January 22nd, 1962 in Portland, Indiana. His parents were Oscar Ray Sr. and Mary Brock. Bolin had said that his childhood wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but also said that it wasn't unusual for his father to beat him, and had said that one time his mother walked him to school on a dog leash. So I think it's safe to say that his childhood wasn't exactly normal. Bolin's mother Mary had said that he was quiet as a child and was also bullied a lot. During an interview, a reporter asked if she thought that Bolin was responsible for the murder of all of those women, and she replied that no, she maintained that Oscar was innocent until the very end, and had said that if he was going to hurt anyone, it would have been his parents because they treated him so badly. Bolin tended to be a loner throughout school and ended up dropping out at the 10th grade. By 15 years old, Oscar had left home in 1977, the same year he was arrested for theft in Ohio. Then in 1979, he was arrested once again for theft at 17 and was sentenced to 1 year of probation. It seemed that while Oscar tended to get into trouble, he really didn't have the telltale signs of being a serial killer. There was no ideation of hurting people or animals, and all of his family members maintained that he was overall a normal child. Oscar's first serious offense would be in 1982 when he kidnapped his girlfriend Cheryl Hafner and held her hostage for several hours, but the charges were dropped. From my understanding, Cheryl refused to testify against Oscar, and then in 1983, the two were married in Florida. Then in December 1985, Cheryl and Bolin had their first child, but he was unalived within a couple days. It was said that the couple was devastated and really didn't know how to deal with the grief and the trauma of their son's passing. And within a couple months of Bolin's son's passing, Natalie Hawley was murdered. January 25th, 1986, 25-year-old Natalie was closing up at the Church's Chicken. Her and a colleague left about 1:30 a.m. Shortly before 2 a.m., Ron Valenti, a sheriff's deputy, came across two people parked at the side of the road. A man and a woman were sitting in the second car. The officer approached the window and asked if everything was okay. The man said that they were fine and that she was just taking him to go get gas since he had ran out. Now, this struck the deputy as odd, because if he's the one that ran out of gas, why would he be in the driver's seat and her in the passenger seat? So the officer asked the woman again, "Are you sure everything is okay?" And before she could respond, the man turned to her and said something. She quickly looked at the officer and said, "No, everything is fine." And unfortunately, this would be the very last time that anybody would see Natalie alive. Then early that morning, a jogger found her body in an orange grove. Natalie was found on her back. She had been stabbed 10 times. Her restaurant apron was wrapped around her throat, and they found a hair strand in her hand. Natalie's car was found with slight bumper damage, indicating that this was probably how her killer lured her out of her car. Now, we don't know what happened in between when the officer saw her and when the jogger found her the next morning around 5 a.m., but we can assume that whoever the officer saw in the car with her was responsible for her murder. November 5th, 1986, Stephanie Collins, age 15, was seen outside of a drugstore where she worked part-time to ask for more hours. She was last seen in the parking lot around 4:15 p.m. The next day, a massive search ensued for Stephanie, but nobody could find her. It seemed like she disappeared off the face of the planet. On December 5th, 1986, a commuter saw a bunch of vultures gathered by the road, so he went to check it out, and then he realized it was a body. Stephanie was found fully clothed, wrapped in a sheet that said hospital property on it. She had also been stabbed, but her head was crushed as well. Investigators had also found a hair that didn't belong to Stephanie in the sheet wrapped with her. And on the very same day, a moving company found the body of Terry Matthews. Terry was also wrapped in a sheet. She also had been stabbed, and she also had head trauma. Investigators did find semen stains on her slacks as well. Terry had left her job as a bank teller around 11 p.m. the previous night. She then saw her boyfriend and left around 2:15 a.m. for home where she lived with her mother. Terry's mother grew worried when she hadn't heard from her daughter by 3 a.m., but assumed that maybe she had stayed at the boyfriend's house. In the morning, when Terry's boyfriend learned that nobody had heard from her and she never got home, he decided to go looking for her. He did end up finding her car at the post office, and her mail was scattered all around her vehicle. CCTV footage showed Terry leaving the post office at 2:48 a.m. After that, we have no idea what happened to Terry after she left the post office and when she was found on December 6th. In April of 1987, Bolin was arrested for aggravated assault, possession of marijuana after he pointed a gun at another driver during a traffic dispute. As a result, he only served 6 months probation. Then in May of 1987, Cheryl gave birth to yet another son, but due to the rough pregnancy, the couple were drowning in thousands in medical debt. So Bolin fled the state, leaving Cheryl, and moved back to Ohio. A few months later, on November 18th, Bolin abducted and essayed a woman while working as a truck driver. Jenny Lefevre, 20 years old, was a cashier at a truck stop and left shortly after midnight. Bolin then carjacked her and drove her to where another truck sat with 2 other men in it. Bolin assaulted her in the sleeper of the truck, then played Russian roulette with her. All 3 men assaulted her for the next 5 hours. They did eventually let her go in a field. She ran and eventually found help at another truck stop. Jenny immediately went to the police and they started looking for the men who had assaulted her. I couldn't find how they identified Oscar Bolin as the person who did assault her, but he was arrested and sentenced in April 5th, 1988 to 25 to 75 years for his part in the assault of Jenny. Then, in the summer of 1990, police started a task force to solve the 3 women's murders. July 12th, 1990, Crime Stoppers got a tip regarding the women's murders. The tip came from Daniel Colby, Cheryl's husband after Bolin. He had said that Cheryl had been told by Bolin that he had killed those 3 women. Investigators then interviewed Cheryl, and she said that Bolin's brother Philip had helped get rid of one of the bodies as well. In reality, Philip witnessed the murder of Terry Matthews, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Cheryl ended up wearing a wire and visited Bolin in hopes of getting information. Bolin alluded to his involvement but never outright confessed. Bolin was charged with 2 of the murders and he was extradited to Florida. Before he was extradited, he tried to hire another inmate to kill his ex-wife since she was going to testify against him. He also tried to escape previously, so he was sent to a maximum security prison. While in Florida, Bolin's then-girlfriend Charlotte Kennedy came to visit. Oh, she was also his first cousin, which is super gross, and they also had a child together, so, I mean, this man is just all kinds of messed up. Charlotte, Bolin's cousin/girlfriend, had come to visit to help bail him out of prison. The plan was to make bail on another inmate, and then that inmate would go and kidnap the judge who was on his case's child, and along with family members of people who investigated his case. The inmate and Charlotte would then take the hostages out of state and kill them if Bolin wasn't released. If he was released, then they would all flee the country. Authorities also uncovered a conversation to the murder of Deborah Stone in March 1987 in Texas, basically confessing or alluding to that he killed her. Obviously, this escape attempt didn't work, and Charlotte was sentenced to 2 years probation. The charges against the other inmate were dropped because he had no intention of actually going through with it, and I guess they could prove that he had no intentions of actually doing the kidnapping. Bolin, however, received an additional 15 years for conspiracy to escape and kidnap. Investigators then went down the rabbit hole regarding Deborah Stone's murder, and they did end up interviewing Doug Tidrow about her murder. Tidrow said that they were supposed to just carjack people, and Oscar Bolin went first. Bolin carjacked Deborah the same way that he carjacked Jenny, and then had Tidrow follow them in the car, just like he did with Jenny's case. Both of the men assaulted her, and then Bolin strangled her, and they dumped her body on an embankment. As a result of the murder of Terry Lynn Matthews, Bolin's employer Bob Call committed suicide March 25th because he blamed himself for hiring Bolin and then sending him on that call on November 5th, 1986. He felt that if he hadn't sent Bolin on the call, that Terry would still be with us. Investigators also discovered that Oscar Ray Bolin and Bobby Joe Long lived within a 10-mile radius of each other during the time they were both active killers. June 22, 1991, Bolin attempted suicide by saving all of his medication and taking it all at once. Bolin left a suicide letter to Deputy Terry saying that he could get all information on the murders from Cheryl. Bolin later denied this claim, saying that it was just a cop-out for committing suicide, but Cheryl seemed to have a lot of information regarding all of the murder cases. And even though she could speak personally about the murders, he proclaimed his innocence until the very end. In July of 1991, Bolin finally went to trial for the murder of Natalie Hawley. Cheryl had said that the night that Natalie was murdered, they went to a Burger King right across the street from Church's Chicken for a cup of coffee. Cheryl said that Bolin scoped out the Church's Chicken and sat and watched the place while they had their cup of coffee. After that, he took her home, and he again left around 11 p.m. and didn't come home around 2 a.m. wearing blood on his shoes. He straight up told Cheryl that he unalived Natalie and had her purse. They then went and wiped down the car, threw the shoes out the car window along with her purse. Bolin also told his cousin Frank that he had unalived Natalie. Bolin was deemed guilty and sentenced to death for the murder of Natalie Hawley. He then went to trial for Stephanie Collins. Cheryl also testified that Bolin kidnapped Stephanie and then made her help dispose of the body, dumping her in a ditch. October 11, 1991, he was also sentenced to death for the murder of Stephanie Collins. During the trial for Terry Matthews, Bolin's brother Philip testified against him, saying that Bolin was trying to drown Terry with a garden hose while she was under a sheet. He then witnessed Bolin beating her to death. He refused to help dispose of her body like Bolin requested. Philip also said that Bolin told him that the way to deal with a woman who says no is to go get a gun and go out and get her. Cheryl had said that Bolin went to the same post office on the same night that Terry was murdered. She also said that the hospital sheets came from her since she had taken them after her stay in the hospital while she was pregnant. It was also noted that investigators found the same red fibers at all three of the murders. On October 20th, 1992, the jury found him guilty and he was once again sentenced to death. Bolin appealed all three cases and got retrials for all three, but the result was the same. He was found guilty and sentenced to death once again between 1999 throughout 2004. While Bolin was going through murder trials, he met Rosalie Martinez in February 1995. She was working as a mitigation specialist for the public defender's office, and she was assigned to his case. Rosalie was married to a prominent attorney, Victor Martinez, for over 15 years. They had 4 daughters together, and they lived in luxury. 3 months after Rosalie met Bolin, a guard reported that Rosalie had been caressing Bolin during one of their visits. As a result of this, she was taken off of his case. Rosalie then left her job at the public defender's office, but she did continue to meet with Bolin over his case. Then in August 1996, Victor filed for divorce from Rosalie due to her obsession with Bolin. Rosalie proclaimed Bolin's innocence from the beginning, and in October 5th, 1996, they married. When 2020, a popular TV show, asked Rosalie what she was thinking, she said that she, quote-unquote, felt pretty and that Bolin loves her deeply. 2020 revisited Rosalie after being married to Bolin for almost 20 years. She said that leaving her life of luxury and marrying Bolin was the best thing that she ever did. She also said that he was dedicated to her and dedicated all of his time to her. Well, yeah, girl, he's in prison. What else is he gonna do? During the time that they were married, Rosalie often put money on Bolin's books and always brought money for snacks during their Saturday visits. Regardless, their marriage would come to an end 10:16 p.m. January 7th, 2016, when he was executed by lethal injection. Oscar Ray Bolin's last meal was a ribeye steak, baked potato, lemon meringue pie, salad, and a Coca-Cola. For this last meal, I would say it's an 8 out of 10. It has a little bit of everything, and who doesn't like a good steak and potato? So honestly, I enjoyed it a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It had a little bit of everything. It had murder, incest, some nonsense at the very end. So if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, share, all of that. And I will see you guys next Tuesday for the next episode. And I'm also here for the dissection in the middle of the week, where I talk more in depth about this case. Well, thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.